So Travis is the founder of a company called Hydro Flask, which he founded, grew to be enormous, and then sold. And now he's off to bigger and better things. I'm going to let him tell us a little bit more about that. Welcome so much, Travis Rosbach, to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, Don. It's a pleasure to be here.
Can you just start telling us briefly about your background, how you founded Hydro Flask, and frankly, what you're up to today? We're all interested.
Wow. Yeah. 30 seconds or less.
Yes.
Well, I was born in Salem, Oregon, and I took off to St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands to meet my dad when I was about 14 and became a dive instructor at about 18, dive master, dive instructor. And then I became a boat captain and I'd take off and travel all around the planet when I wasn't scuba diving in the winter times in the Caribbean. And then I became a commercial airline pilot and flew predominantly. The airline was in the Virgin Islands, Seabourn Airlines, and then I flew jet charters out of Florida. And is that a karate chop?
No, that's me fixing the focus on the video.
It's better.
Somebody
now.
wrote in the chat that they couldn't see. It was really fuzzy.
Yeah, it's better now. Oh yeah, I did karate, if that's what you were referring to, for a little while. After I flew jet charters out of Florida and then moved back home to Oregon and became an entrepreneur, basically a serial entrepreneur. Fence company. Moved out to Hawaii, started Oahu Signs and Screen Printing, and that's when Hydro Flask kind of hit me, and we founded Hydro Flask.
What do you mean it kind of hit you? Did you have a dream about it, or did you just suddenly realize you were surfing one day that you really wish you had a metal water bottle? Yeah.
It kind of did just hit me. I was thirsty. I went to a sporting goods store to get a water bottle, and at that time, all I knew was plastic water bottle, Nalgene brand, and they were all gone. There were only 2 left. And I asked the guy, I said, well, what happened? And he said, well, we're not really sure what it's called, but there's this stuff. We're not real familiar with it, but just as a preliminary precautionary, what's a word for after the word precautionary measure, I guess.
Yeah.
They pulled all the water bottles.
There was some sort of contagion in the plastic. Is that what it was?
Yeah. BPA, they were just starting to find it in Europe. And I guess there was a little article written, and the owner of the sporting goods store was French, and she saw it and she said, pull them. So they pulled them. And I just so happened to get there like 20 minutes after they had pulled all the bottles. And so I said, well, who's going to fill back up this shelf? And the sales associate, it was like, there's nobody else to do this.
Wow.
And I said, I will. And it came back in my head and it came out my mouth and I said it. And I was like, oh shoot, what did I just say?
It's the worst thing when you make something public, because then you have to follow through.
Exactly right. And he laughed at me. And in the time that it took out of my mouth and the time that he laughed at me, I saw the future. I saw about 10 years down the road, and I saw myself standing up on stage talking about this highly successful water bottle company. Sure enough, 10 years later, I was on stage down in California, and I had this like major deja vu where it almost like knocked me over. I looked down and I'm wearing a stupid suit, and I threw it off, and I was like, damn, what had happened here? So yeah, it did. It kind of just like hit me. And then it started from there, and it just started to snowball. Like, act boldly and unseen forces will come to your aid.
This is an awesome story, and I could go down 100 different rabbit holes. Like, how did you actually get this product produced? How did you get designed? But we're here today to really focus on how did you sell it? How did you market it? And one of the things I loved when we spoke, Travis, is oftentimes entrepreneurs who've had the kind of incredible success you've had. So for anybody who isn't aware, Travis ended up selling the business for more than $200 million. People who've had that kind of success oftentimes when you ask them questions, they want to talk about, culture and team building and these kinds of things that are relevant in the early stages, but you sort of really feel more once the company gets larger. And entrepreneurs really want to hear about the very, very early days. How did you get that initial traction? What were the things that you did to actually get those first customers? And so I loved when I was talking to you because you were able to remember back to those early days and you had fantastic stories, in particular about the guerrilla marketing that you did. Can you talk to us a little bit about what guerrilla marketing is and why it's helpful for startups?
Yeah. So, to be fair, I sold and then they poured a tremendous amount of money into it. And then it's again for the 200. But when I was 12, our next door neighbor had died and he left. I got one thing from his house. We were charged with doing the estate sale. My mom was. And I wanted this bookshelf and I got the bookshelf and it rains a lot in Salem and I was constantly grounded. And so I just read a lot of books and the vast majority were Brian Tracy, Zig Ziglar, Jim Rohn, a lot of business,
Sure.
80s and 90s business books. And one of them was by Jay Conrad, Guerrilla Marketing. It came out in about 84, I think. And I remember thinking like, why did this attorney have a guerrilla marketing book? At the same time, he was extremely successful. And so I kind of started correlating the dots that, oh, wait, even if you're an attorney, you have to do some sort of marketing and some sort of like, what is this guerrilla marketing? So I read through it and I just thought, wow, this is incredible. And I already forgot the question.
Well, the question is, what is guerrilla marketing? Why is it beneficial for startups?
Yeah. So my definition of guerrilla marketing is that it's basically for us anyway, for Travis anyway, we didn't have a lot of money. And so anything that we could do to make a very like unconventional and very memorable experience for people. And, that with the keyword being memorable, like we don't have a lot of money, but any money that we do spend, we want people to remember it. Like it has to be like a flash, like bang. And then they have to preferably have a very positive interaction with the brand or with the product from there forward. And that was always sort of my ethos. My belief was that if we can use the very little money that we have and make a very big splash out there in the world, then other people can pick it up and go out and sell it for us.
Yeah. I love that you aren't connecting your guerrilla marketing directly to sales. You're connecting it to making a splash, getting some brand recognition, becoming memorable in the assumption that will ultimately drive sales. Sounds like you were just so confident in your product that you figure that would ultimately drive sales.
Yeah, good. Spot on, Don. Yeah. I believe that branding and marketing and sales are three radically separate categories and three different approaches to each of them. And we had the very beneficial benefit of having a wonderful product. Like people drink water, they would get hydrated, they would feel good, they would buy more, their spouses would steal the bottle and they would need to buy 3 more. So it probably wouldn't work if you had a really bad product, but a good product that can sell itself. Yes.
Yeah. We had a guest on recently talking about sales, and she talked about how much she hated doing sales and she always thought it was kind of yucky, until one day she realized that actually sales is really about delivering people who need something exactly what it is that they need. Right. And I think that sounds like that's the perspective you took, because you said people need these water bottles. I have great water bottles. And so selling and marketing is really about helping people get what they need and want.
Yeah, absolutely. I always felt like if I could create a bottle that I actually want, that I will actually drink out of, because there were only 2 other, well, there were technically 3 with Nalgene. There were 3 water bottle Nalgene kind of got pulled, but the 3 on the market at that time, did not suit my needs. I wasn't happy with them. So my belief was, well, if I can just go ahead and create one that I will use, I'm sure other people will dig it, and they'll start using it also.
Yeah.
And then the added benefit of health, people being hydrated and feeling better. And it was like a major epiphany that a lot of people had, is that I feel better physically, mentally, every way. And it has to do with this water bottle here.
Yeah.
And so it just, boom, the sales just took off.
That's amazing. So I think doing guerrilla marketing does not absolve you from the need to have to come up with a targeted niche, because you can't blanket the whole world with your marketing from day one, because it's just unaffordable for an early stage company unless you have all the funding in the world. So what niche did you target in the very beginning with your marketing?
And that was always the very difficult question that we would wrestle with at almost every meeting, was like, who's our target market?
Yeah.
Well, anybody who drinks liquid. Okay.
Right. That's the challenge. It could be anybody for you,
Exactly. And so I would routinely ask, like, people would say, oh, well, we have to market to these people. Well, if you market to those people, are you telling me you're going to shut off that other demographic? Well, oh, I guess they need to drink water too. Okay, then, like, who's to say that those demographics cannot be privy to our product? Like, yeah. So it was always a dichotomous situation for as far as that goes. And I think what we really did was we said, okay, we're moving to Bend, or I'm from Oregon. And so moving to Bend was a very natural outdoor product, area to be. So we went towards the REI, Dick's Sporting Goods, Cabela's, outdoor retail show to get the outdoor crowd into it first. And at the same time, I got us into Whole Foods. The second account we ever got was Whole Foods. The first was a friend of ours who was Trudy at Mountain Supply in Bend. She was the first one. I mean, she was a family member, basically a friend and family member. So she started first, but then Whole Foods was second. And then another Newport Market, Joe at Newport Market, was the third account. So sort of fancy foods and outdoors. But at the same time, anybody who drank liquid.
Yep. Yeah. I think that's a challenge a lot of business owners face, is figuring out who that early target market is going to be when there are so many different niches that their product would appeal to. And I think what you're saying, part of it is which market can we reach cost effectively, and who is more likely to talk about us and spread the word. I know, like, for our company, we looked at one particular industry vertical pretty early on, and we were getting customers there. But what we discovered is they didn't tell anybody else. And it was because they felt like that they had kind of won the lottery working with us and didn't want their competitors to know. So they didn't spread the word. Well, that's not very good for us, right? So we had to rethink how we carved up our market. It sounds like you took a similar approach.
Yeah, that can be a very real problem. Well, and the other thing, I mean, the kind of the other benefit that we had was that the plastic bottles and the aluminum bottles were pulled from the shelves. And so there was open shelf space, like, immediately. Like, I physically walked into Whole Foods when the guy was pulling the bottles off of the shelf, and he was pissed. I said, what's the matter? He said, well, the aluminum company's got BPA in it, and they lied to us and they lied to everybody. I said, good, because here we are with stainless steel double wall vacuum insulated.
Right.
I don't even know what that means, but as long as it doesn't have BPA, this whole wall is yours. I'm like, cool. And so we would literally just replace empty shelves and empty walls of water bottles. And so that did help tremendously get the bottles into the market.
Yeah. Okay. So tell us about some of the guerrilla marketing tactics you employed, because I think these are fantastic.
Yeah. Well, they weren't always well thought out. They weren't always necessarily planned ahead of time, but one of the first ones that I really remember was our very first outdoor retail show. And it was like it was really expensive to get down there, and we didn't really have a whole lot of money to put into a booth.
Yep.
We hired a local guy to cut bamboo. And so we had these really thick bamboo. I mean, we just moved back from Hawaii, and she and I had met in the Virgin Islands. And so we sort of had this tropical theme going, but we built this big bamboo, 10 by 10 bamboo structure booth. And after it started to get hot, it dried out. And when it dried out, it cracked, and it would echo, like it would boom, and it sounded like a gunshot. So every once in a while, there was no rhyme or reason to it. It just sounded like gunshots were going off in the hall that we were. And first people would duck and cover, and then started coming towards us to find out, like, what are you shoot? Like, why are they allowing you to shoot in here? Oh no, it's a water bottle company. Why is the water bottle company shooting? And so, I mean, we had a tremendous amount of people, like, after they were no longer scared, they would come towards us. And we found that trade shows were just really awesome. We could pick up sales reps, and we could just pick up a lot of doors.
Yeah.
Doing these shows. So in the mornings, and from having the sign and screen printing company in Oahu, we did a lot of promotional products for other people and for us, like pens and just like little tchotchke things. So what I would do in the mornings is I would go around and I'd put like anywhere from 2 to 10 different Hydro Flask ballpoint pens on people's desks. Because, I would kind of sneak into the show early through the back door, and I had this big bag of pens, and I just go through, and everybody needs a pen at a trade show, especially before the tablets were a big deal. And so like everybody would be using Hydro Flask pens they'd see our name and like, like we're in the Patagonia booth and we're using a Hydro Flask pen.
As if it's the official pen of the trade show.
Exactly. Right.
Right.
And nobody really like complained to the trade show people that we were doing this. And then another one that we did was I noticed that the security were typically like just kind of hired. They would hire a lot of the local homeless people. And so
that's nice.
Yeah, totally. And so we got a lot of t-shirts, like a lot of extra large and 2 extra large t-shirts made. And we would just give them out, and it said Hydro Flask and security. Didn't say that, anything else. That was just the 2 words that they said. And I would walk around and give them out to everybody before the show, and I just kind of hand it to them like I was the employee. Like
right. Here you go. Here's the shirt to wear today.
This is my job. Just put it on, man. Don't give me a hard time here. And they'd put it over their clothes, and they'd sit there with their security shirts on. And then we would give them a water bottle too. We'd give them a Hydro Flask. And so they'd sit there with the Hydro Flask drinking out of their bottle all day. And that went on for a number of trade shows before they got privy to it. And they were like, you can't do that. And then they actually started charging. That was like one of the package deals. You could pay $10,000 to have the security do it. I'm like, you should pay me half,
Yeah, that becomes one of the activations in trade show language.
Yeah.
Events are just ripe with opportunities for guerrilla marketing. One of my favorite stories is from Kenneth Cole. If you know how they got started, there was an event where all of the retailers would choose, the stores, the products that they were going to sell in their stores. And Kenneth Cole, when he first got started and was just doing shoes, I think at the time, couldn't afford to rent the hotel room at this event. So what he did instead is he went through the New York City Office of Film and Production or whatever, and got a license to film a movie called How to Start a Shoe Company or something like this. And then parked a filming trailer right in front of the hotel where the event was happening. So he got a license to shoot on that street that day. And he set up this trailer, and he had people coming in and out of his trailer all day long. And so that's why the company is actually called Kenneth Cole Productions, because that's what he had to put on his license.
Oh, that's awesome. I love stories like that. Absolutely love it. Another thing that we used to do quite a bit was we started out with like friends and family, but I started a call list. And so, we have like 20 people on the list, and we have, say, 50 stores that we want to get into. And I would kind of make a schedule. And then each of those people on the list had their allocated time that they would call and ask, do you have Hydro Flask? And if they would always say no, because I knew we weren't selling there.
Right.
And they were always like, oh, dang, well, I guess I'll have to go to your competitors down the street, or, oh man. And we had no idea if they had competitors down the street, but that was kind of always what they would always follow up with was, oh, well, I guess your competitor gets that money. Darn. Okay. And then they'd hang up. And then like an hour later, somebody else would call in. Hey, do you have Hydro Flask? Oh, you don't? Oh man. Oh, okay. Well, I guess I'll go somewhere else then. Thanks.
Yeah.
And it would typically only take less than a week. And then they were calling us. I mean, we had big major stores calling us saying, we need to get these bottles ASAP. calling and calling and calling. And so I'm like, oh, well, okay. We sell to your competitors, but I guess we could probably make some, room for you too. And then here locally, they would go in kind of like flash mob style and just ask, hey, can we get a Hydro Flask? What do you mean you don't have Hydro Flask? Who doesn't carry Hydro Flask? Everybody carries Hydro Flask. And then it just kind of became the reality that everybody sells Hydro Flask.
Sometimes you just have to create that initial traction and that initial demand yourself. Reddit has a similar story. I guess when they first started, so it was Alexis Ohanian and his co-founder. When they first started, it was just the two of them. And so they had to post all of the articles, only they just got a bunch of different accounts that they ran. And so it seemed like a whole bunch of different people were posting, but it was really just the two of them. And at one point, one of them went on vacation for the weekend and the Reddit homepage was empty because, of course, nobody else was actually posting anything. And they knew they had made it when they had finally other users actually posting their own content, and they could leave for a weekend and there would still be a homepage because other people were actually posting content. Sometimes you just have to create that initial demand yourself. It's like what bars do when they have people wait outside in line to make it appear as though there's a lot of, must be full and tons of people are trying to get in when it's completely empty inside and they just haven't let them in yet.
Yep. That behind the velvet rope is that's a very real theory, and we had really a difficult time because it took off so quickly that we had a hard time keeping inventory. Like we just couldn't physically pay for and bring in and produce enough. I mean, there'd be 120 days from the time we had to pay to the time we received them to the time we had, actually received any money, any ROI on the product. And so there was a significant chunk of the first year where we just had no product. And we were extremely fortunate that we were able to get away with it, but it caused a little bit of that, wow, these are so good that I have to wait a month to get them. And they would get them. And sure enough, they would live up to the expectations. And I think that's a big part of it. That's a big key facet of that, is that they did what they said they were going to do. There was no bait and switch. They sold themselves from there on. I mean, so that was kind of our velvet rope kind of thing.
Yeah, it speaks to a little bit about adding friction during the sales process. I mean, it seems like having not enough product would be a bad thing, but in fact, it demonstrates to people that there's so much demand you can't keep up with it. It's similar with, like, for example, the sales process for our business. It makes sense for us to not publish our phone number or to make it a little bit harder to access us, because that way people who aren't really qualified don't go through the extra hoops, right? They don't go through the extra pages. They don't read and learn a little bit more and make sure that they're a good fit for us before they actually reach out. Sometimes it just makes a lot of sense to add a little bit of friction in the sales.
Yep. I can totally appreciate that. It's not necessarily if you can't afford it, like if you have to ask, you can't afford it type of thing.
Right.
But a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. So is there one thing that, looking back, Travis, you would like to change, or is there something you would do differently?
I think, I have a hard time thinking about things that I would have done differently. I like to not really live with a lot of regret. I think that maybe one of the things I would have done is, as soon as I recognized that, well, I shouldn't say that even. No, I think that there's really not a lot that I would have done different. I mean,
Yeah.
it was a full on endeavor that took a lot of time, energy, and effort on a lot of people's parts. But, I might have stuck around for maybe a little bit longer. I might have stuck around for another year or so after I was kind of done. But there again, like the season was over and I was just ready to move on, and I'd gone through a bunch of stuff personally, and I was ready to just go on to new adventures. So yeah, I can't really think of anything that I would have done differently.
Yeah, I'm the same way. If I rarely regret things, I'm more likely to wish that I had learned more quickly, but not to wish that I hadn't gone through the learning process.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's those hard times and those hardships that I always learn the most. And I can kind of get onto the other side and go, okay, that happened. Next time we're going to do it kind of that way, but totally different also at the same time.
Yeah. Yep. One more thing I wanted to touch on, Travis, that I sort of missed here is when we were talking before, you talked about the difference between asking for permission and asking for forgiveness and how important this is with guerrilla marketing. I was wondering if you could just elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's a Marines thing. My ex-stepdad was in the Marines, and I think that's kind of where I picked that up from. But I didn't go to business school, so I didn't really know some of the proper ways to do proper business. I would just sort of kind of bust through the wall and just say, hey, we're here doing this. And, we kind of walk it. Like I had this mentality that or this theory, I guess, that if you walk in backwards, people don't really ask you any questions. I've walked cruise ships and into nightclubs and bars and restaurants. And I've been able to get into a lot of places just by walking like physically backwards. And with Hydro Flask, it was a lot the same. Like I always just kind of like went in and just started doing something. And then if people said, no, Travis, you can't be doing that, it was like, well, I'm sorry, but it's already done, and would take banners with us everywhere we went. And I just put up banners everywhere. And it, sometimes people would call me out straight away and say, what are you doing? Well, I don't know. I'm just here hired to put up this banner. I don't know why. Well, who hired you? I don't know. Some guy. Oh, okay. Well, and sometimes we could leave the banner for, 6 months or a year. The banner would stay up and people would see our logo. And other times, I'd get in trouble and they'd say, you got to pay a fine or whatever. And it's like, well, I'm just hired from, I'm just off Craigslist. Somebody just hired me. And
Travis, I'm really starting to think that acting might have been your calling.
Thanks, Don. I never thought that. Yeah, I love negotiations too. It's like negotiation played a big part of our marketing, honestly. Like we didn't have a lot of money, so we did everything we could. A lot of stickers, a lot of t-shirts, a lot of hats, a lot of things that people just did not expect, just anything to cause a surprise or some sort of unconventional interaction with people.
Awesome.
Well, that's a wrap. If you enjoyed this episode of Marketing Made Easy, please subscribe to Jottful's YouTube channel. That's JOTTFUL. That way, you'll never miss an episode. We'll meet you on the next one.